floor of the House before it's implemented?
I want to say this, Debal. I appreciate your reading of Article 27 very much. But I also want you to go to Article 43 of the Constitution, and 53.
43 and 53
tells you every person has the right to education. But Article 53...
43 or 53?
No, 43. I want you to
every has the rights to education.
F.
Yes.
Okay.
Subsection for F.
Yes. Every person has a right to education. Then you go to 53. If you go to 53B, every child has a right to free and compulsory basic education. Okay. Now, what is the obligation of state in education? The obligation of the state to education is to free and compulsory basic education. What is university education? University education is higher education. What is the state's role in provision of higher education? The Constitution does not talk about that. Now, why am I taking you to these three articles, from Article 27 to Article 43 to Article 53? Because I want to speak, one of the things that I studied very passionately when I was studying at the university is economics of education, which is different from the other economics. And it tests this: the returns to a community, the returns on basic education are public returns. Public in the sense that when you take a child through basic education, you give that a child an opportunity to be a public person. Public person meaning he'll be able to contribute significantly to the development of a country at that level. One, he will ensure when he has children, he will take them through good health systems. He will take them to school. He will build a good house. He will have water. He knows basic hygiene. So the returns to basic education are to the public. But what are the returns to a country in terms of higher education? The returns are usually private. Private returns to education. Higher education gives you that because you went to university. You'll have a job, and that job will give you comfortable life, and a lot of the things that you are to you as a person, private returns. So that is why the state is obligated to provide basic education. Now, when it comes to the funding model of universities, the world over, even if we went to the greatest democracy in this country, America, do they provide free university education? They don't. Actually, in America, higher education is the most expensive. You hear in every election, every presidential election in the United States, the president's policy on higher education, how student loans, student financing, and all that comes out as one of the key agenda. Why? Because education, higher education is deemed to belong to the family more than to the public. And therefore, when you come now to funding, I want now to come to the financing higher education. When you want to finance higher education, you need to be very careful what you do with it because of the scarcity of resources. Can Kenya as a country educate every child at higher education levels, at university education level? The country cannot afford that. So what happens? Individuals are obligated to finance their own education. But because we are a welfare state, then we say, because we're a welfare state, how do we therefore help everybody to achieve the highest levels of private returns to education? Then we say we want to fund public universities.
Where are we a welfare state?
We are a welfare state.
I've never known that we are a welfare state.
We are a welfare state.
How? Where is it predicated on the Constitution that we are a welfare state?
I will explain to you why this country is more of a welfare state. One, we always want to say we want to do subsidy. Why do we want to do subsidy? Because we want to take care of the welfare of the people. Why do we say we are giving...
Who wants to do subsidy? Government came and
okay.
You pulled the subsidy. This is why we want to have the resumption
I'm coming
of the subsidy.
Why do we fund free primary education or basic education? Why do we fund that? Why do we fund healthcare? Why do we fund a lot of agriculture? Why do we want to subsidize fertilizer? Because we want to take care of the welfare of our citizens. So that's why countries in Africa, a lot of the countries in Africa, they work on economies that are more of welfare states, because we want to take care of the welfare of our... That's why when subsidies are pulled out, you make noise. Why? Because you believe government need to subsidize it to make the lives of people easier. That is why Kenya, as it were today, is more of runs an economic model that is more of a welfare state. If you go to other countries, for example, you go to the United States, health. Health is one of the biggest issues in campaign. How you finance health, how your government will finance health. Well, because health is seen as private. You're supposed to take care of your own health. You're supposed to buy insurance policy and do this and that for yourself. In Kenya, we want to say we will subsidize it. You'll find a medicine at the hospital because the county government bought it and put it there. That's how you see Kenya tilting more. We need to make the decision. Are we a full welfare state or we are not a welfare state? Are we full capitalists or we are not full capitalists? But I want to come to the issue of financing higher education. It is a tricky affair all over the world. Countries that are at the highest GDPs, countries that are the wealthiest, can afford to give free education in higher education. But even the greatest democracies, some of the richest countries, today if you want to take a child, even in the United States, you take a child to university, you pay through the nose. A child has to go to take a loan at a bank, or he gets a loan from his family to be able to go to university. You go to a country like Canada, you will find the same models. It's only the Scandinavian countries that have managed to give free university education to their citizens.
Because the tax regimes are working.
Yes, and the tax regimes are working, and the taxes, especially in the Scandinavian countries, are very high. One of the highest taxes in the world. You'll find them there. Why? And they even sometimes give bonus to their citizens. But I want to say that resources for this country are scarce. As they are scarce, then we need to make a decision. Do we fund higher education completely? Kenya today, the exchequer funds salaries, funds capitation, funds capital development in projects in universities and all that. But then the question is, can we as a country allow every child to go to university without paying fees? Or can we advance a loan to every university student? Is it possible in the kind of economic state? I remember, I think I've told you this, when I went to university in the early years, I want to finish this, Omogere. When I went to university, when I went to university in the early 90s, we were being given money called boom. Yeah. And you go to the bank. I think it was 43,000 and some hundreds there. So you go to the bank and get your money. Me, who came from a poor family, would get the same amount of money. The guy who came from the richest family would also get the same amount of money. So what happens to my money? I will budget for my money, for food, for clothing, for everything.
Boom was 43,000 in the 1990s.
No, 4,000.
Oh, yeah.
It was 4,000.
No, it wasn't. During my time, it wasn't.
It was 43,000.
I think it was around 43,000.
The highest it ever went was 6,000.
90s, the first semester we used to get 5340.
Yes, 5340.
Then
5340.
Yeah, that's
5,000.
340.
But he said 43.
Around there.
Okay. I wondered how
that was the first semester.
Good money.
The second semester, it used to be reduced by another 300. You get 5140.
Oh, yes. Okay. So when you get this money, so I would budget for that money. Everything, because my family, actually I have to leave part of that money with my family because my brothers have to go to school. So I would buy a uniform for them. Then the little money that I have, I'd go to university with and stay there. Now, a kid from a rich family also would get the same amount of money. So what, the advent of the boom box. I don't know whether you heard of the boom box. Yes. So that guy would go to a Sony shop and buy the largest music system. And live luxuriously within the university and put everything there because we were being treated the same. There was no equity. The poor kid would get the same amount of money. The rich kid would also get the same amount of money. It brought a lot of inequity in the university. A lot. You realize that if we are going for a trip.
A lot of inequity.
Yes. when you're going for a trip, for example, if you're in a class like geography or what, now you need to go for an educational trip. The poor kid cannot afford to pay for the trip. But the rich kids who had the money were paying for the trips, and they were all over having fun. And I remember, if you want to live in Kenyatta University, there are these hostels. I forget the names. Suswa and the next hostel there for men. And if you are rich, you live in that hostel. If you are poor, you live in Nyandarua. I used to live in Nyandarua, Block 4, But the rich guy would go and live.
That's University of Nairobi?
That's Kenyatta University.
Kenyatta University. The rich
Every
kids.
university had
prefabs. Yes, or you really live in prefabs. And the other kids will live in the high end. So we used to have this thing, ozone, and we used to be called district focus. we went to university as part of the district focus for rural development. And then there are the guys who were ozone. So you'd be said, hey, district focus DF. We were DFs, and the other guys were ozone. It brought a lot of iniquity in the universities because funding model was equal to everybody, whether you have money or you don't. Your father would give you 3 times the money that you require at university. And yet, government again would give you the same amount of money. This is something that we need to look at and put a stop to it and say, if your father can afford to take you to university, or your parents, allow the other children who cannot, let government support the other children who cannot be supported by their parents. But if you're a parent, today, I wouldn't want, if my son wants to go to university, I wouldn't ask my son to go for a government sponsorship. I would want to look for the money and pay for my son. Myself. But if that money can help a poor child there, let it help that poor child. I think that is how we build an equal society.
But still, you've teased out this particular article, and I wonder, were you reading it as an intertext of the Article 27, or is it a complementary, or is it against?
I think
why did you flag it?
Progressively